From Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the studios of 850 AM WFTL, this is Outlaw, America's alternative voice. Streaming around the world at outlawshow.com. This week, we meet the man who helped overturn Florida's ban on gays adopting children, attorney Robert Rosenwald. Here's your host for Outlaw, a real legal eagle himself, Dean Trantalis.
Good evening. My name is Dean Trantalis, and welcome to Outlaw, America's alternative voice. Tonight, we are going to be speaking with the ever-pleasant Rob Rosenwald, who was very active and instrumental in seeing that the law against gay adoption in Florida has been overturned. And tonight's show is going to be sponsored by R3 Accounting and America Tax and Insurance Services. So we'll be right back to talk with Rob and hear about his message right after this message.
Financial and retirement planning can still bring peace of mind, even in these uncertain times. American Tax and Insurance Services has the tools for your estate and tax planning needs. Your family's financial security is important to us. Visit AmericanTaxandInsuranceServices.com to learn more about our legacy and wealth preservation services. Everyone claims to have good ideas. We really do. American Tax and Insurance Services. Business partners with R3 Accounting. Call 954-302-3228 or visit AmericanTaxandInsuranceServices.com today. You live a full and balanced life, and you want an accounting firm that keeps your business and personal finances equally balanced. R3 Accounting has the team of professionals who understand the useful balance of financial information and metrics. Visit us online at r3accounting.com to learn how we give our clients a full range of accounting and tax services. With over 30 years experience, your balanced solution is R3 Accounting. Go to r3accounting.com or call 954-202-9770. R3 Accounting, seeing your world from all directions. This is Outlaw, America's alternative voice, with your host, Dean Trantalis.
News Talk 850.
Welcome back. This is our sixth show as we continue the journey into an historic approach to educate, challenge, and to provoke listeners into hearing and understanding issues that directly affect members of the gay community, as well as their families, their friends, and co-workers. This is the first time in South Florida a radio program will feature matters that exclusively focus on the gay community. And each week, we will be presenting guests who will speak to us about a topic most likely you've heard about in the news. We will explore the history, we will entertain hopes, and we will invite you, the listener, to call in and participate. Our phone number here at the station is 877-850-8585. That's 877-850-8585. The show can also be heard on the internet at outlawshow.com. That's outlawshow.com. The gay community is often referred to as the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community, LGBT for short. And each day its members are challenged by discrimination and the consequences of bigotry that are often left unchecked by rules which govern our society. Outlaw will serve as a new voice, an alternative voice, to the messages heard most often in the mainstream media. It will act as an outlet for those whose voices cannot otherwise be heard, and through this dialogue it will hopefully uncover new ways to put an end to injustice and inequality. Tonight our discussion will focus on adoption and the adoption law in Florida. It's been a long and challenging road, and tonight I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend and colleague in the legal community, Mr. Rob Rosenwald. Welcome, Rob.
Dean Trantalis, it's good to see you tonight.
Yeah, it's been a while. I really appreciate your coming tonight because the issue of adoption by people who are a member of the gay and lesbian community has been quite controversial, and it still simmers beneath the political undercurrents that we feel here in Florida and throughout the nation. And I'd like to ask you a little bit, if you could just tell us a little bit about Rob Rosenwald. You went to school where, tell us a little bit about your background before you became part of this effort.
Well, my background is what led me to this effort. Fortunately or unfortunately for me and my parents, I was born a gay kid in a conservative Christian family in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so I was raised to be evangelical Christian, to hate gay people, and to believe that we were all going to hell. And so there were a lot of parts of my life that were imposed upon me based on the belief that if you were gay, there was something fundamentally wrong with you that you had to change immediately or you were going to hell. And so what I wanted to do throughout my life was to bring justice to this situation, and that led me to the law and eventually led me to gay rights law, which I ended up being able to fulfill through the ACLU of Florida's LGBT advocacy project.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Was going into the ACLU your first job as a lawyer?
No, I worked for a very famous and legendary civil rights lawyer who was a federal civil judge in Miami, C. Clyde Atkins, who was the judge who desegregated the schools of Miami-Dade County, Broward County, Port St. Lucie, all up and down the southeast part of Florida. He desegregated the schools. He was the one that made it illegal to arrest homeless people just because they were homeless. And he taught me the very basic tenets of the law that says that everybody is entitled to equal treatment under our Constitution.
So, okay, here we are, a young graduate from law school, and you were lucky enough to be mentored and guided by a person who shared very progressive points of view. And I guess eventually it led your way into the American Civil Liberties Union.
Well, yes, but not before some detours. First, I was lured into a big law firm with the promise of big money and an office on the 52nd floor of the Wachovia building in Miami, Florida, which at the time was the tallest building in Miami. And it, as sort of a metaphor, actually an actual metaphor.
Did you have a window in your office?
My entire office was windows, but outside the windows was a vulture's nest. I don't know if you know anything about Miami, but the vultures come in the winter to mate and to roost there, and on top of the tallest buildings, they build their nests.
Is there some reason or coincidence that the vultures chose the roost of your law firm to? Well,
I think that's. I'll leave that.
Certain irony there
for the elders of my law firm to say. But when I looked out my window, I would see vultures with. And if you don't know about vultures are huge. They have like 6 to 8 foot wingspans, and they're sitting right outside your office, like lined up out there, like they're about to eat your carrion. And so for 3 years I did that before I finally gave in and realized that fighting for the man was not what was going to be my future. And then came my real career when I did my real work, which was to turn to the plaintiff side and help people get out of the trouble that being in a position of powerlessness came from. And so I did that for several years, leading me then to a grant, which from an organization that you're very familiar with, the Graves Foundation, that ended up providing a $50,000 grant that provided the seed money to provide my salary to start a gay rights project at the ACLU of Florida, which I ended up doing.
Let's back up a little bit and let's talk about that for a moment. There was a point in time when the American Civil Liberties Union in Florida decided it was going to tackle the issue of adoption, gay adoption here in Florida. And was it then that they established the LGBT position that you were eventually hired for? Is that kind of how it happened?
Well, it was a little bit the opposite. That the Graves Foundation offered an amount of money to an organization that would do something that was relevant to gay people. And
there was a project. It was an LGBT project, was it not? And I think that was the application that came before the trustees of the foundation.
Yes, and gay adoption has always been, for all the organizations that fight for gay rights in Florida, has always been the keystone issue, because we were the only state in the country that outright banned gay people from adopting children.
Now,
so it was something that every organization wanted to fight. But you may remember at the time that the LGBT Advocacy Project was started in 2005 with this grant, the Lofton case, which was the previous challenge to the adoption ban, and there had been 7 previous challenges to the adoption ban, all that had failed.
in Florida.
In Florida, the Lofton case had just been lost. The U.S. Supreme Court had just denied cert, saying that the ban could stand. And so to fight it again right then was a very controversial decision. And we got this grant from the Grays Foundation. I was hired to lead the effort for the foundation and the project. And one of the first decisions that I had to make, along with my colleagues, was, is it time? Can we right now go so soon after the gay adoption ban in court again after having lost 7 times? And we decided, because of the clients that we had, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, that the kids that we needed to help and the parents that we needed to help them right now.
Well, let's talk about that. After 7 defeats at the judicial level, what made the ACLU feel that this particular effort was now going to be successful? Was it the climate that they felt that it was ready? Was it the particular plaintiffs that you were representing? What were the key factors that you think that made that decision ultimately be taken?
Well, there were a couple of factors. The first thing was for the first time we had funding from an organization that was willing to fund the start of an overall campaign, a project, the LGBT Advocacy Project, which was a legal effort that included outreach, civil rights outreach, and outreach to the public in Miami and in Florida, specifically on the issue of gay rights. I mean, you have national organizations like Lambda Legal and the National Center for Lesbian Rights that did it on a national level, but there was never an organization that was willing to put an amount of money down and say, we're going to do this just for Florida. So there was money to do it.
So Lambda had been approached and they were not interested in doing the Florida endeavor, even though we were the only state in the country that technically had a ban on adoption for gay individuals?
When I was hired to lead the LGBT Advocacy Project and to build it based on this grant, I had to fight not only within the ACLU, but with the other national gay rights organizations, not because they didn't want it overturned, they all wanted it overturned, but because we had just lost at the U.S. Supreme Court. And you can sort of analogize it to the California situation that's going on right now with marriage, where people are saying, after having lost the California marriage vote so soon, should we be fighting it right now, or should we wait for a couple of years to allow public opinion to change? The same debate happened at our local level in Florida with adoption, and I had to fight with national organizations and with the ACLU to say that now is the time.
Why?
Why is exactly what I had to tell them, and the why was Martin Gill. Martin Gill came to us and said, I have been foster parenting. I have 2 children who were brought to me in the dead of the night on Christmas Eve. One of them a newborn baby, one of them a 4-year-old child. They had ringworm. They had no clothes. The 4-year-old had no ability to speak or communicate. They were sick, and the baby had an ear infection. They were just in sad shape. This family took care of them, pampered them, gave them the American dream for 4 years. And then when they went to adopt them, the state said, you can't adopt them. We're going to give them to some strange family who these kids have never known. We're going to rip them from the only family they've ever known and give them to somebody else simply because you're gay. And when they came to me and said that, I thought, there is absolutely no political justification for stopping. We have to fight no matter what the consequences are.
Wouldn't the other cases have also been steeped in some kind of very sympathetic set of facts, and they ultimately lost as well? I mean, they weren't all Well, tell me a little bit about what the other cases were that differentiated this from the others.
Well, the other cases were very, very emotional cases, and they were very good cases. The Lofton case, which was the previous federal challenge, which had been just denied by the United States Supreme Court, was a family that adopted children with HIV at a time in the early 90s and late 80s when HIV was much, much scarier and a certain death sentence for these kids and for anyone involved with it. Nobody would take these kids. No one would even let them in their house. But the Lofton family took them in and wanted to adopt them. And the courts said in that very sympathetic situation, no, we don't care. We don't care if no one's willing to take these kids. Because you're gay, Mr. Lofton, you cannot have these kids.
Okay, so here we had an extremely tragic situation for these children, and certainly a very heart-rending kind of result that the denial of the adoption caused this family to be separated, and now we have another equally difficult situation between the children and the foster parents. What made you think this one was going to win?
Well, what made us thought we were going to win isn't really the question. The question is whether we thought we had any chance of winning and what the consequences were if we lost. When I applied finally, and the job of lobbying to start this case included lobbying other national organizations to support us in doing it, to support the ACLU to pay for it, to support organizations like the Graves Organization to pay for my salary to do it. And convincing people that it was the right time to do it, for me personally, was because Martin Gill came to me and he said, help me, I can't do this without you. But the reason that we could do it then was because we had, as a result of the Graves Foundation grant, we got some other money and we were able to learn how to raise some more money, and we learned from the Lofton case and the other 6 cases how to run a campaign. And so we had a very well-oiled public relations machine. We had a outreach to religious organizations. We had things that none of the other cases had, that in order to give the court the backup, in order to give the court the support that it would need to make that kind of decision. So it was really the seed money that you received from the foundation that allowed you to get matching grants and to start the effort. And let me ask you, did Martin Gill have a partner at that time? Yes, he had been with his partner for, I think at that time, 11 years. Now it's been like 18 years or something like that. When I first met the baby, Nathaniel was 2 years old, and right now he's like 11 or something like that. Okay. And he's a young man and going into junior high school. It makes me feel very old, but they had, yes, the couple had been together for a long time and have now been together for a much longer time. One of them is Martin is a flight attendant, and his partner is a supervisor for Amtrak, and so they both work traveling jobs, which allow them to make their schedules such that they're home, so that there's a parent home with the kids all the time.
So tell us a little. So the case came about. You were able to convince the organization that this was the case to take. We were going to start at the trial level, and we were going to hopefully be successful in getting these guys, these fellas, the chance to adopt their foster children. And what year did this all happen? Do you recall when you first filed the case?
Yes, we filed the case in early 2006. I remember when we filed for authorization. The way the ACLU works is you file for authorization with the board of directors of the ACLU. It's a legal board of scholars who get together and they debate the merits of your case and your arguments and whether you have any chance of winning and what the ramifications are of losing. And it was a very close vote, and they decided on a very close vote to allow us to go forward with the case. But the email that I got from the head of the legal panel, a very smart professor named Mike Macenter from Nova University, he sent me an email saying, even though you have no chance of winning this case, it's worth doing anyway, just because some things are worth fighting for even if you have no chance of winning. So go for it. And that was the last email I got before filing the lawsuit. And that was the attitude that we had going into it, that we had no chance. We had just lost the Lofton case. We were in Florida where they were electing people like Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. We thought we had no chance, but we
It was worth the shot.
It was worth the shot. It really was.
And did you have a team working with you at the ACLU, or were you alone on this case?
Well, at first I was alone on the case. I was hired through the grant, with seed money through the grant,
Right.
and I was told, if you can raise some more money to get this thing off the ground and to make a real effort of it, go at it. Raise your money, and you can do what you need to do. If you can't raise the money, then in 1 year, when the original seed money from the Graves Foundation dried up, then the project would just cease to exist.
But then you came calling in the next year too.
Well, I came, but at that time, thankfully, I was able to say, due to the Graves Foundation seed money, I had managed to find three other organizations who were willing to match. And so by that time, the ball was rolling. We were ready to file. We had funders who were ready to pay for the litigation, as well as what I mentioned earlier, the public education component of it, to move public opinion in the state enough so that when it came time for the courts to rule, they wouldn't feel like they were going to be burned at the stake if they ruled in our favor. And that was the key determining factor.
So let's talk about this law that you were trying to overturn. Tell us what the origin of the law was, the scope of it, and how it compared to other laws in other states that you did allow for gay adoption. Tell us a little bit about the nature of this law.
Well, I mean, the law is, we have in Florida the dubious distinction of having the only state in the country that has ever banned
Was that
adoption.
under the Anita Bryant era? Is that when the law was passed?
It is. Back in the mid-'70s,
yeah.
Exactly, when Miami-Dade County passed an ordinance protecting gay people from employment discrimination. Anita Bryant rose up in her campaign, her fury, to stop
her broom.
stop the gay rage, and she not only fought and successfully repealed the ordinance to protect gay people from employment discrimination in Miami-Dade, she went to Tallahassee, and she got people in a fury up there, and they did all kinds of things. One of them was to pass a law banning gay people from adopting children. The other one that people really don't talk about much these days, but it is really just as relevant in our day and age, is they passed Florida's statute which banned gay people from marrying. And so those two laws were passed within a day of each other.
So before then, it was okay to adopt if you were a gay person.
Officially, yes. I mean, if you went into a judge and told them that you were gay and you wanted to adopt a child, you would probably be thrown in jail at that point rather than allowed to adopt. But there was no law allowing you, disallowing you to adopt. I mean, you have to remember, before this time, this is the Stonewall era. This is when you would see police trucks pulling up to hidden gay bars and arresting everybody in the premises. So,
right.
So the question of
we
whether
heard about that on the previous shows.
The question of whether gays could adopt or marry, it was really irrelevant at that point. But the legislature was so afraid of this that they went and they passed a law saying you can't adopt and you can't marry.
You know, it's funny because there are people in political office who have come to the gay community seeking our support, and we've discovered that some of these legislators who we would otherwise think are being very progressive people actually voted for the ban in the late 70s. It was obviously this hysteria that you probably had to vote for it at the time.
At the time, and that has certainly been the case. At the time, very few people had the political wherewithal to not vote for such a hateful bill. One of our strongest allies now is the ex-Speaker of the Florida House, Elaine Bloom, who was at the time very, very, very powerful and the Speaker of the House, and she led the Florida legislature, and she voted for the ban on gay adoption. She now has a gay son who is married to another very nice gay guy, and they have twins together, and she is the proud grandmother of those two twins, and she has publicly apologized for her vote and said and written public statements saying how she came about, how she came to vote for the ban, and how she came to change her mind. And so yes, there are people do change. There are some people who voted for it then who are very happy that they voted for it then and still are. and then there are people who voted against it. I mean, there was a senator, and his name escapes me right now, but he spoke out. He was one of the only senators who spoke out on the Senate floor against the bill and said there has been no discussion about the science, nothing to prove that gay people would do anything but do good for children, and there is nothing here but hate, and voted against it. He was one of only, I think, a couple who voted against it, and he was promptly voted out of office.
So obviously the times and so forth were so different then as they are today. And when we come back from our message and our commercial break, I'd like to talk a little bit about how times have changed and perhaps what your role has been in making those changes. Thanks.
Well, thanks.
Thanks so much, Robert.
From Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the studios of 850 WFTL, this is Outlaw, America's alternative voice, streaming around the world at outlawshow.com.